How is everyone doing? Thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I want to get into today is about programming. And when I say programming, I mean your brain, how you are programmed. Because I don't think a lot of people realize how much when they were younger, by being programmed a certain way, how it affects your life, obviously, in the future. And I didn't really realize this myself until I really had time to step back and really analyze it actually after my divorce. So, for the most part, we were all raised in a certain environment, obviously. We were all programmed to a certain degree, if it was a religious background or being anti-religious or just kind of being neutral. I think nationality-wise, we were all obviously programmed by a certain type of household to eat certain foods, do certain things, behave a certain way, obviously speak a certain language or languages for that matter, and many different things down to the way we dressed, act. Our cultures kind of developed who we were, right? Obviously. That's no big deal, right? But I don't think people realize, especially as they get older, that can either help them or hurt them, right? A lot of times. And I can just give you my information regarding what I went through to really discover a lot of things regarding how I was programmed, how I thought a lot of things were good and a lot of things were bad. And it was really up to me to change my programming or my mindset to be a lot more open-minded and realize more than anything, a lot of my beliefs were actually not doing me any, they weren't doing any harm necessarily, but they definitely weren't helping me proceed forward to where I wanted to be. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And I'm going to tell you how I kind of came through all this crazy stuff. So I have a close friend who's got a PhD, and he was my production partner. So we made a couple movies, I guess you could say, together. And he is exceptionally brilliant. I think he was one of the fastest grad students to get his PhD out of Pennsylvania, Penn State. And what was interesting is after my divorce, we ended up living together because, and what was funny is we ended up not even making movies after that. We were making movies before that when I was married. But then we became roommates just because we thought we'd probably maybe be easier to work on production, and we both lived in a certain area. And to make a long story short, what was amazing with him is he was constantly calling me out on my bullshit, and I was constantly calling him out on his, I think. And over the years, obviously he's a lifelong friend. We started, we've been friends for well over 20-something years. I don't even know at this point. But when you have somebody who is extremely intelligent on many different levels and no nonsense, you're only going to learn from that person. And I think he always kind of was very complimentary to me about how I really absorbed everything he said. Even if I argued with him over certain things, regardless if it was film, sports, I don't care if it's religion, politics, whatever the case may be. I had nothing to do actually with politics. I don't know why I said that, but we would call each other out on that, but I would always listen to what he says. And I think a lot of people don't listen, and they don't want to accept their flaws. And they don't want to change their programming because they think it's a huge part of their identity, which it is. But a lot of people, I believe, get paralyzed and stuck in certain situations because of their beliefs. And I'm not here to tell you at all to change your beliefs. That's not what I'm here to say. What I'm here to say is what I discovered about myself. I also made a film. My first film was called Sore Losers, which was about the underground world of gambling in Chicago. And I wrote it, I wanted to direct it and produce it. And then one of the leads, which was one of my closest friends, became very religious and kind of pulled out. So we didn't have anybody else really to work with the chemistry. So I ended up being in that film. And after making that film and then editing the film, I realized a lot of the character in that film was who I was. Like, I wasn't acting a lot of times. It was me, basically. I wrote that part for my buddy, but it was kind of more of a character based on me. Unbeknownst to me, I was just writing characters. It could have been a combination of both of us, but once you play the role, I kind of became the role, and it was just very fluent. And I seen a lot of the way, I was able to see how I talked, how I even treated people. We did behind the scenes stuff. I seen how everything, my actions, it's amazing. I almost felt weird watching myself and editing myself. Thank God I had an editor, because I'd be like, I thought everything stunk that I did, and thank God he was able to work through that. But again, programming and my mindset said everything you do kind of sucks, right? You don't know what you're doing, even though this is your first film. I had the ego to create a movie, but did I really have an ego to perform in a movie, which is two obviously different things, even though I did modeling and acting when I was younger. But I was able to analyze my behavior in such a way, very in depth. And I think now, maybe with technology, we have phones, people shoot videos of you. You kind of see how you act and behave to a certain degree. But usually when the camera, the red light goes on, you're kind of somebody else. That's really not who you are, right? You're kind of having fun, or you're at a birthday party, or you're usually in those type of environments, unless you're in the acting industry or doing something like what I'm doing, like you're doing YouTube videos or something in that nature. So I actually met Kevin at the premiere of my movie there, and then we went on to make another film, and then some shorts, and then we wrote a couple other features and did a bunch of different things. Which was interesting is when technology regarding phones and all these different things, because this goes back to 99 and 2003, when everybody started to get a little bit involved with shooting and stuff. We were getting out of it, which we were on the ground floor of it. We should have just slammed it, but we had some things. We were trying to raise money for a couple other things as well. It didn't pan out, and then we were just exhausted, I think, from doing that, right? We were just fried. But then when we became roommates, like I said, I think we were to a certain degree frustrated with each other. We felt bad for one another. We didn't want to, because I think he felt bad. He really wanted to take on producing and raising the funding for it. And I wanted to just, this time I was exhausted from writing, directing, producing them. I just wanted to take on the role of directing them. And I felt like when he was trying to raise the funding, my script sucks. And I think he thought when he was trying to raise money, he sucked at doing that, which I don't think neither one was really that bad, because I ended up optioning one of my screenplays. And I just think we beat each other up. But while beating each other up, I think when you're backed against the wall, especially after I went through a divorce and everything, you really figure out who you are. And you're like, holy shit, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? Even in my marriage, what did I do right and wrong trying to make films? Who am I? Like, what led me to succeed to make certain films? What made me to failure, to not being able to make any more or make the ones I want to make? From a financial level, what made me fail is, maybe I was thinking as a father, because now I'm divorced, never wanted to get divorced, and my marriage. And one of my friends once said, Rich, you really never cared about anything but your kids and making a movie. And it kind of hit me in the chest and said, wow, maybe that was my perception with a lot of people, with my ex-wife, who's wonderful. So I don't know if I think what happened with me programming again is thinking that if I wasn't successful at making films, I was a failure in her eyes and everybody else's eyes. But at the same time, I was neglecting, I think, a lot of people, even including my parents, because I became extremely obsessed with making films and wanting to succeed at doing that. But back to us being roommates again, or us just, going back and forth constantly and over so many years. It really comes down to behavior, and I talk about this a lot. What was my behavior really? We have good days. I always say bad days. You're going to have good months, bad months. You're going to have good years, bad years, right? For the most part. But a lot of times we keep having bad years over and over again. We're starting to analyze our life. Nothing's really moving forward. We always say we're going to save money. We don't save as much as we think we are. We don't save any at all. We say we're not going to do this. We keep doing it. All of a sudden we're going to start saying we have New Year's resolutions, stupid shit like that. You never stick with them. We could go on and on and on. Especially in relationships. I teach that in my Mastering Self-Confidence program. It's called The Blueprint to Finding the Woman of Your Dreams, even if you've been through a bad breakup or divorce. A lot of guys keep repeating the same thing, and women in the same relationships. They look for the same type of person. It's usually the same outcome. It's kind of a stalling tactic. But if you're really willing to start analyzing your behavior, even on social media, a lot of times just catch yourself how you talk to certain people. You may talk to your parents, one way you're talking to friends, understandably. Another, you're talking to your girlfriend, wife. Another, you're talking to your kids. Another way, behind closed doors, you're this way. When you go to church, you're this way. Really, who are you? And I think a lot of people get confused. And in my program with guys, I'm like, it's your identity, dude. Like, a lot of people have identity crises where they really don't know who they are, right? A lot of them are like, I want to find a good girl, but then they're at strip clubs or they're at clubs. Or I want to find this type of person, but they never put themselves in the right place or the right time, nor do they know how to handle those environments. They really don't want it. They want it, but they want it for nothing, or they don't want to accept what it takes to get it, I guess I should say. So what happened with me is, back to programming, I was raised by, my parents were divorced at a very young age, like 5 years old, and my father owned a nightclub, and my mother Started off being a bartender because my dad and her opened a club at a very young age. And then my mother went into waitressing, but ended up working for the Archdiocese, Catholic organization in Chicago. So I had really, truthfully, and we're just discussing this with my mother, is I had a mother that wanted to raise me as a priest. She wanted me to become a preacher or priest. Wednesday was Bible study. Obviously, Sunday was CCD. That's where you go. I don't know if you know that. It's just like a little, you go to school in the morning for church. You learn about, the Catholic religion. And then afterwards is Mass. And then even during summer, I used to go to summer religious camps. All right. So for 2 weeks at a time, you're going there. It's really all about the Bible. I mean, you do some things, but it's really about a preacher preaching about what the Bible's about, learning verses and all these things. It's a wonderful environment. It just wasn't my thing. It was in Wisconsin. I'm just not an outdoors type of guy. Then my mother eventually went on to send me a Catholic high school, in which I graduated. And then on the other side, I'm being programmed by my father, who's a nightclub owner, very flamboyant. He's around a lot of beautiful women. He used to even take me, I don't know if you follow any of my stuff, I used to go to the Playboy Club, but we used to go to comedy clubs. I used to go to a lot of concerts with my father. So he was raising me to be that type of person in that environment, right? And I obviously would gravitate more towards my father. But what happened is I got older. I was burnt out on both, truthfully. When I turned 20, I felt like a veteran. I was basically in the nightclub industry for 18 years. Even though my father sold his bar and semi-retired at 15, he went to Orlando and then opened a vending business in which we put gaming, which would be like billiards, dart games, 3D golfs, tabletops, all that in bars, nightclubs, gentlemen's clubs, restaurants. So I was exhausted. I used to call it audio assault, smoke assault. I was involved back then. It was just it was just exhausting. I felt like a 60-year-old man. And when I really just wanted to have 2 daughters, I want to get married and really get away from that life entirely. I was exhausted from religion. With my mother, nothing against her. She was still working for the Archdiocese. She's a wonderful cook, being surrounded by priests, brothers, deacons, the whole thing, which that's a whole other thing. And I was just really exhausted from that. And I also realized when I was younger that I was being raised by immigrant grandparents from Italy. And what was funny is when I was younger, I was exhausted from the Italian thing. Everything was Italian. Everything we had to eat, everything we had to do, which was funny as though they didn't teach us the language because they didn't want us to have an accent. And my grandparents they wanted us to, like, I don't know, it was weird. They wanted us to have all the culture of Italians, but make sure we were Americans, because I think they went through a lot coming to this country and the way people treated them. Now that I look at it in hindsight, they were like a lot of Italians that came from the South. They were uneducated. They didn't have any money. And I think they didn't want, all of a sudden, I guess, that on us. Whatever. So I was just really tired of that whole scene, truthfully, even because it was really like I was in an environment which I only hung with Italians. My mother's mother had her at 15, and then I don't know who that grandfather is, my mother's father. I heard he was Irish, but he may also be Irish and Italian. And then my grandmother's, everybody else was Italian. My father's parents are all from Italy. My other grandparents, everybody's from Italy. So my mother's mother ended up marrying somebody else and having 5 more children with a full-blooded Italian. So basically, we weren't, it's not a racist thing, but my mother, we didn't even celebrate, we only celebrated St. Joseph's Day. We weren't even allowed to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. My mother wouldn't allow me even to do Halloween. She thought it was the devil's night, which is hilarious. But, and I'm not digging on my mom for that. I love her for, just wanting to protect me and all that. Maybe she was a little over the top. But back to programming. So as I got older, I always was kind of fighting not being like my dad because of the way he was, and not being like my mother, overly religious. So, but I realized as time went on, I started to break it down. I really am more like my father than anybody else. I know even now that I'm older, I look at him when he talks, I almost know what he's going to say before he says it. I know our voices are pretty close to identical. We don't necessarily look the same by any means. I'm balder. He still has hair. But the way we move our hands, the way we act, our attitude a lot of times, our dispositions are pretty identical. It kind of freaks me out. They say when you get older, you start to see your parents in the mirror. I was like, holy shit, I'm my father. Oh my God. And people just constantly, tell you that as well. And I kind of started to say what really, I know my dad's strengths and weaknesses, like most people, like our parents, and same with my mother, but, they program me. And I think they program me, and I was always fighting the programming which is fine. But as I got older, I really realized, like, this is really who I am and what I like. So, and it really didn't hit me till I went to Italy. So my dream was to go to Italy with a couple of my Italian uncles, and we all went to meet our other side of the family. We had like 130 cousins in Chicago, tons of aunts and uncles Italian. I went there, and they have a massive family there as well, and I loved it. I felt kind of like I was back in the 70s and 80s with my immigrant grandparents and all the family members. It's much simpler. It was just like I fell into heaven. Being back in Italy, I'm like, why? A lot of times I was just fighting that. This is really who I am. I'm a lot more like these people instead of always trying to say I'm not like these people. And it's almost like I had to reprogram myself after the reprogram, because I kind of was being programmed when I was younger one way, and I kind of constantly fought it. So I reprogrammed my mind to be another way, which I learned a ton. And then I kind of went full circle to say, wow, I'm actually very comfortable being what they wanted to program. Now, I'm not going to say I'm a religious freak or any of that. I have nothing against people that are religious. I love people that are religious. I have nothing, Same with politics or any of those things. I've never once been involved with politics. I'm not going to get in arguments with people or any of that. I just never was interested in that. And as I got older too, I think I was very open-minded as far as nationalities and becoming friends as I got older with tons of different peoples. I don't care what religion, nationality, what country you're from. As long as you have the best intentions, I believe, as a person, and you're a good person. I'm not here to judge you. I hope I don't come across like that. But I think one thing back to the programming, what really helped me too is after I got divorced, I was single for a long period of time. I mean, I may have had some small relationships that really didn't work out necessarily, and not in a bad way, because I'm honestly pretty programmed this. I'm always looking out for what's best for both people in a relationship, and the last thing I ever want to do is hurt somebody or lie to them or any of that nonsense, right? To a certain degree. I mean, we all bullshit here and there, but I spent a lot of time alone. I moved to San Diego, and I was exhausted from writing screenplays. I got to write 2 books. So I kind of let everything spew out of me. I didn't realize how many years it was taking me to do this. Plus, I was able to travel all over the country with a new job by myself. So I was by myself for weeks, months sometimes, literally. If I didn't see my daughters flying to Florida, I'd see my mother, or maybe come to, whatever. I had my cousin. But for the most part, I was by myself and really learned who I was. Right? And I discovered a lot of things about myself that I liked and a lot of things that I really didn't like. All right? By writing books, and I'm not telling you got to write a book, write a screenplay, go do videos, do a podcast. But take time to really figure out who you are and what you really want out of your life. Because I think a lot of times we're so busy and consumed in our life and then our kids' lives, for instance, or our parents' lives or our colleagues' life, or career and all that, you kind of lose your identity. A lot of times, also, I think we get to places where we think that's going to make us happy, and we get there and we realize this isn't really what I thought it was, right? It's not really making me that happy. Kind of maybe, I always said the ride along the way a lot of times was a lot happier or fulfilling than actually achieving certain things, and that definitely goes for when I was making movies. I love the adventure of making movies. Then at the end, after you edit it and it's over, you have the movie, which is wonderful, but then you got to shop it, and you're going through distribution and everything. But the best times were filming it and having fun and hiring, your cast and rewrites and all these other things. That's where the fun was at for me. But I think, and I can't speak for women, but I think a lot of dudes really they deal with a lot of rejection in their life, especially when they're younger, trying to find women or going out. And some do, some don't. I think with social media now and everything else, it's changed. In texting, you got more opportunities to meet women or just meet different people in general, even through LinkedIn, business. I think on one end, it's much simpler to connect with people. And then on the other end, it's very flooded, right? So now you're getting bombarded. So I don't know if it's better or worse. It's probably better, though. At least you get to reach out to people. But again, watch your behavior, because we're all programmed a certain way, and I think a lot of our programming shoots into social media, which you don't realize everything you do and say people are really going to take to heart. I don't know why people take all that shit so seriously. I never took really anything in writing that serious. Maybe if it was serious as far as like about sports or something regarding what's going on in our country and things, that's meant to be serious. But if a lot of people are making comments, I always said, or giving their opinions, you don't really hear the tone coming out of their mouth, right? kind of like a comedian, because I was raised around a lot of comedians. My father was hiring them. Comedians can say anything they want. It's just kind of how they say it. But a lot of times when people read things, they react to it depending a lot of times on what mood they're in. So you really got to think about that. Don't let other things, and that's part of the programming, do a lot of things upset us? Or do you let everything kind of slide off your back, no sweat off my back type guy or woman? Really take a step back again and look at your behavior. What's making you upset and what's actually making you move forward, I guess, regarding the way you're programmed is what I'm really trying to get down to here. Because I see so many people letting so many things stop them from becoming really what they want to become because they're scared. And I think a lot of that programming when we were younger is they installed fear in us if we didn't do certain things. It was like we were turning on them. It can even be a sports team. Like I'm a Chicago Bears fan. And then, let's put it this way, with my daughters, I was very open-minded. I didn't want to put the hammer down on them. Even though I sent them to a Catholic school when they were younger, I said, listen, this isn't about you having to believe in God or not. I just want to give you an opportunity to believe in it if you want to. If you don't, I understand that as well. All right. Same with sports teams. One of my daughters is a Chicago Bears fan. The other one's a diehard Packers fan, which I despise the Packers. I think she went with the Packers because she knew how much all our family members love the Bears. And I want to choke her sometimes, like, as a fun thing. But my point being is, back to the programming, is I think there's so much fear installed with if we don't do certain things. Also, at certain times in our life, we're failing. So if you don't get married in your 20s, you're failing. You're programmed. If you're not doing this in your 30s, you're failing. You don't have a house. You don't have this. You don't have this type of car. You're failing, right? Somebody's installed all these things into us. Even the way I'm seeing it even more and more as I'm getting older, like installing what Black Friday, like if you don't buy a certain amount of gifts on Christmas, then this is wrong. If you don't constantly give to your children, regardless even if it hurts you financially, then you're doing something. Like, all these things are ridiculous the way we were programmed, I believe. And what's happening is our kids now are being programmed kind of by us and by others, I think, in social media and different environments, because they have a lot more information coming at them, where we really just had, when I was growing up, parents and grandparents and their friends, cousins, aunts and uncles for the most part. I think I could speak for most of us when we were younger. That's whoever we were surrounded by. But a lot of people now, and programming doesn't just stop at 5 years old. Let's call it for what it is. I know you learn a language, you get programmed for the most part up until there, but you're really being programmed constantly by the time you hit your teens, high school. So really take a step back and figure out really how you were programmed and how you should make certain changes if you want to benefit yourself. And I know it's hard to do, especially a lot of people want to dress differently. They're afraid people are going to perceive them differently. Some people want to change their job, even though, I even have a friend that's a lawyer, couldn't do it anymore. He wanted to be a fitness trainer, and he quit. He couldn't do it anymore. He lives an incredible life now. He says, I don't make nearly the money I make, but I love it. I feel better than I've ever felt. I'm training people, way more fulfilling. And that goes for a lot of people I know in the entertainment business. A lot of them don't have a lot of money in LA, but they went after their dreams. Where I think a lot of other people were programmed to be stuck in like the same town, which I'm from Chicago. Most of my friends, a lot of them didn't leave. I'm not saying it's bad. A lot of them love their environment. They love the town. But I think a lot of them wish they moved to warmer climates, especially ones that have sons that are athletes that want to play certain sports year round. And there's a lot of different things, because what happens again is your programming is you can't leave your family. I was the first one to leave out of like 130 cousins, and I'm not exaggerating, and moved to Florida at I basically, at 18, officially moved, but I was coming back and forth since 15, and they all thought I was turning on the family. How dare you go there? Why would you do that? Why would you leave your family? Now, even my mother, my kids live in Florida. Sometimes I know it upsets her that they live in Florida, not Chicago, but both of my daughters ended up having a certain type of health issues. One had a liver transplant, and the other one has diabetes 1. So I definitely think she's happy that they're in a warmer climate year-round. And she wishes she years ago would have moved to a warmer climate, but now with her doctors and her family and all her friends, they still live in Illinois. She came and tried to live in Florida for a little bit with me. It just wasn't her thing. I think she was too young at that point in time, but now she's older, and I definitely think she'd love it. But again, as soon as she got here, she's programmed like most people to say, hey, this isn't like Chicago. The food's not like, everybody goes somewhere else trying to bring what they left behind to where they're at. I see that all the time. And I travel all over the country, and there's tons of people always pitching that. I'm like, if you love that much, go there. A lot of New Yorkers in Florida do that all the time. And I'm not just talking food. I get it. We can all kind of open food, like Portillo's. I like Portillo's. I'm from Chicago. They opened 2 in Tampa. A lot of New York pizza. New York. It's not the same necessarily. We get it. But everything was always better where you're from, not where you're at. And again, I think that's a programming mechanism to say, hey, where I'm at has a lot of strengths that where I came from do not have. And I tell people that all the time, especially regarding weather. I love warm weather. And in Chicago, their program, they say, oh, it's not bad here, it's not bad here. Any opportunity they get, they go to California, Florida, or Arizona. It's not like, why are you doing that? Well, it's better to live here and vacation there. Not really. Because I tell them all the time, weather-wise, you have 65 good days, 300 bad. I have 300 good, 65 bad. And I can assure you, I've been to every major city in North America numerous times. And for me, I had to deprogram myself to say, hey, where do you really want to live? But I was fortunate enough to visit everywhere, and I realized the more I was leaving, where I wanted to come back to. I always said I leave, and I usually end up in cold, 6-7 months, leaving Florida. Most of the places are all cold. And then I'm always coming back to warmth. And I would say San Diego would be, and Florida are my 2 favorite places in North America, just for what works for me. And back to programming, I think a lot of people were programmed to think where they live is the only place they can live. And that is not true. And they only usually go to certain places to vacation, so they think the vacation is kind of like it is to live there. But it's absolutely not true. It would be, for instance, me when I'm in Florida, I take my kids to the city of Chicago. Most people don't live in the city. A lot do, don't get me wrong. Most live in the suburbs. I mean, if you go to Manhattan's Manhattan, LA's LA. But most people's lives, for the most part, aren't those type of areas, especially tourist destinations. When people come to Orlando, they think Orlando is all about, obviously, Disney World, SeaWorld, Universal, all these type of environments, when that's just Lake Buena Vista area. That's really not Orlando by any means. It's not even Florida to a certain degree. It's a little area, it's a pocket, that's a fantasy. So, all right, so I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. We're going on 30 minutes, but I really, if you have an opportunity, just start spending more time alone, I tell people, and not being busy alone, if that makes sense. Doing something that helps you, like as for instance, reading about certain things that you're interested in. If you're alone, just really for 15 minutes, I don't care if you're in a sauna in the gym, start there, or a steam room, or even a gym by yourself, just not being distracted. Or being at the point where you're doing things and you're still looking at your phone. I see that where people constantly have to be busy doing something, right? And I get that. But we've gotten to the point where all we're doing is kind of like we're wasting a ton of time. And we're just busy doing all these things. And a lot of people at the end of the day aren't really happy in the situation they're in. But they never take time to really sit back and analyze it and say, really, what is really wrong here? And it's easy to blame everybody else for your problems or the position you ended up in your life and all that. But the truth is, it's all on you, man. You're the only one who's going to change your life for the better. And when I say better, I'm not telling you to be. I think a lot of people have these unrealistic expectations. If they're not a millionaire, they're not going to be happy. If I don't live in this size home, and I always talk about this on my podcast and even in my videos, is it's not about all that shit. Because a lot of people, you don't have a lot of possessions or all these pressures because you don't want them most of the time. What you usually kind of want is peace, tranquility. You want some, I think you want for your kids or yourself or your parents or whoever, even your colleagues, a sense of comfort. And you just want to, live your life where it's safe and you're kind of a little bit in harmony with everything, not where it's all dysfunctional, right? And I understand we all have to deal with dysfunctionality because you can't control what everybody else is doing in your life. You can't even control 3 feet outside of you. So if you have kids, you're not going to be able to control their behavior. You have parents, you have colleagues, all these things. But if you can sit back and start learning how to behave a certain way that makes you always comfortable basically in your own skin, and take time out to think about what you're doing and every move you're making that's hopefully taking you to where you want to go. But if you even look at, if you like Starbucks coffee or you like Dunkin' Donuts, something you wake up and you go do that, it's fulfilling to you, right? Just start doing, I say, small things, reprogramming your brain to keep doing those small things. And eventually, I believe, after you keep doing small things, things will start to add up. But you have to deprogram yourself to say, really, what do I want? Most people don't even know what they want. They really don't. They think they know what they want, but they're never willing to go get it, even a new job or a new whatever it is, a new relationship or whatever, again, you have to slowly but surely put yourself in the right place at the right time and just lead that way. I always call it the turtle in the race, right? You don't have to be the rabbit who runs and keeps running and then runs out of juice or goes all over the joint, but that's kind of like what we've been programmed to do. If we're not doing something, we're doing nothing, which is ridiculous. Do something right, you know what I mean, at this moment, or keep doing things that you know are going to fulfill you and make you happy. And it takes time. That's the thing. I think people don't have the patience or time because, again, they were programmed in their mind with all these dates and deadlines, and which are really unrealistic because I've spoke about this before. No one lives the same life, no matter who you are. No one was programmed by the same family members for the most part, except maybe your siblings. But then again, none of you live the same life. Every day, you don't eat the same foods as everybody else. You don't have the same sleeping patterns. Most likely, you don't have the same job. You don't work out the same. You don't have all the same friends. You don't have all the same family members. I don't even care if you're twins, triplets, whatever it is. You all live, for the most part, separate lives. You have different mindsets, and you have to acknowledge that. And you really got to figure out your own identity to say, what is my core values? What do I really want out of my life? And start heading that way and stop being distracted by a lot of bullshit and nonsense. There's a lot of people that are pitching you. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about, right? I mean, if they're successful and they have what you have to a certain degree, say possession-wise, great, listen to them because that's definitely going to help you. But a lot of people I realize that we listen to that tell us a lot of things, they really either weren't that successful or they don't want what we want, right? You're back to being programmed by that type of environment. And I still listen to a lot of my aunts, uncles, cousins, and a lot of people because I give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm always learning, and the trick is listening. But I know a lot of their programming mechanisms, and I hate to say it, were old and outdated to what I believe now. That has nothing to do with religion or any of those things or politics. I'm not saying that. But a lot of times if I look at some of my uncles or aunts or them, because I really respect them, say they're in their 70s and 80s, they were programmed by immigrant grandparents. And they were programmed by even, people from another country in Europe, which is wonderful. But if you think about it, if you look at the times, how they have changed, how different they are. I always talk about if my great-grandfather and great-grandmother came back now, he wouldn't even know what the hell's going on, right? Because in the last 20 years, I believe, really with technology, how we've all been able to kind of communicate with one another and how we do certain things. I mean, I don't think people really realize what the phone changed the game. From GPS to emails to texting to phone call to everything we do, information-wise, even Google, it has made really, there's facts. Where before, if you went 20, 25 years and you had a dispute and said, or a question about this or that, you didn't know where to go. You had to go to a library or you just asked somebody. Now you want the facts about where something is. You want an address to something. You really want to know what's going on. In a matter of seconds, you can find out either through the news. I don't know if I necessarily believe all that, but all these type of things. So I'm going to wrap it up there. So this was a very interesting podcast for me because it's good when I talk these things out because it reminds me of a lot of things that I need to work on as well. That's what's interesting. I always said, even when I wrote my books and my screenplays, I was able to release and let things flow out of me. And then I listened to them. I'm like, holy shit, do I really believe that still? I do. I really do, believe that. Well, I forgot that I believe that. Why am I not still working on that? So same with you. If you have opportunities, write notes. If you want to learn a different language, just start slowly. Don't jump into things full force. That's another thing I was going to tell you, programming-wise. Don't quit. Even if it's, again, working out or you want to quit smoking or all these things, just do it as slowly as possible, but be consistent. And I think you're going to be shocked at the results you get. Because, again, it's back to programming. You're watching TV shows or listening to podcasts rated like, I lost 30 pounds, or infomercials, I lost 30 pounds in 30 days, I look and feel great. I'm going to call most of that bullshit because they do things too quickly. They change their diets that they're never going to stick with. They live a certain lifestyle that they're not going to probably maintain. Go look at them a year later. They went back to the same weight for the most part. Not everybody. But just do things slowly. All right. Thanks for listening to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? And I wish you nothing but the best.